America's fastest growing TV brand, TCL, brings you Mackey and Judd.
You know, the play calling thing, I'm going to, again, rely on, we have a great staff and we have good players, and the still line from Pat Shermer, it's about the players and not the plays. So it's something that we're going to work on Sunday and let it go. I think Coach Zim has been pretty clear since he's been here what he wants in his offense, and it's the Minnesota Vikings offense. And obviously, you know, it's a physical group, and it really just matches the players that Coach Zim and Rick have acquired here. It's a physical group, it's a smart group that, you know, hopefully we're versatile enough to make it hard on the defense.
Number one, they have a good working relationship. They sit in meetings all the time and talk a lot, you know, and so there's a lot of back and forth with those guys. Trying to figure out what's the best way to say this. I feel like Kirk will be open to, you know, suggesting things a little bit more.
That's such a great line. I love how he's like, I'm going to try and
he can't help himself.
Not say what I really want to say, but just by saying it that way, it's very obvious what he meant.
Yeah.
John DeFilippo wouldn't take input from Kirk Cousins. Okay.
That's Mike, though. That's the one thing about that guy that I love, though. He can't help himself.
Yeah. It makes him more fun to follow anyways. So I was telling Matthew Collar, this is my grand hot Vikings take. I was telling Matthew Collar off the air about an hour and a half ago, I still think the Vikings can win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that it's for sure going to happen. I'm not saying that it's likely to happen.
Are the Vikings going to run the table starting Sunday through the Super Bowl?
It wouldn't.
Will that be write that down?
It wouldn't blow me away if they did. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And he actually he took my hot take and he agreed with it. Just so you know.
Were you guys smoking dope before the show?
We were, yes.
Okay, that's not fair.
PCP.
That's not fair at all. I'm in here working with Chip from 3 to 4, totally sober, and you guys are doing drugs.
We were on some hallucinogens.
Oh, dude, you know what, the Viking? I can see it now.
Paint. Yep. And I think the way that we characterized it in our drunk Vikings discussion off the air was at times this year their defense has looked completely unstoppable. And their offense has looked nearly unstoppable, especially early in the year when Adam Thielen had, 7 or 8 games in a row of 100 yards, and Stephon Diggs was having all these big performances. And then Dalvin Cook comes in and he does what he does. But they've never really, for stretches, even very few games, they've never really put the two things together. So there's very few teams that can boast the defensive upside the Vikings have shown this year and the offensive upside that they've shown. It's not like Saints or Rams offensive upside, but it's 5th or 6th best offense in the league upside that they've shown with a passing game and a quarterback that can throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. And like that's in Kirk Cousins and that's in the offense's DNA if you tap into the best of it. So what happens if, much like the 2007 or 2011 New York Giants or much like the 2012 Baltimore Ravens, what happens? Maybe you're not able to do it for a 14-2 record and just dominate teams for a regular season. But what happens if for 1 month, or in this case, let's call it 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, what if those two things align the way that you've wanted them to all year? Couldn't you see this team knocking off a couple good teams in the NFC? I know you're going to say no.
No, keep going. Keep going. I'll tell you what I can see.
But I think, so this team absolutely shut down Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson 2 of the last 3 weeks. This defense is almost completely back to where it was last year in the passing game. They've allowed tied for the fewest passing touchdowns in the NFL this year. It's back to being the 4th best defense in the league, yards per play, even after the terrible start to the year. All these things. And if switching out the offensive coordinator flips a light switch on and all of a sudden Adam Thielen's unstoppable again and Kirk Cousins is insulated the way he should be, things change pretty quick for this team. I still think, it's not likely, but I still think this team can win the Super Bowl.
All right.
Take me behind the woodshed.
No, I'm not going to. Not completely. Eventually I will, but not completely.
Hot Take Cops is recorded on location with the men and women of sports talk. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in Hot Take Court.
Okay.
This is more like
I'm sitting in the back of the Hot Takes
live
squad
PD. Quick turnaround
Did I see that? Was it you that got a live PD hooded sweatshirt, or did you get one for the wife?
No, the wife got matching ones for the two of us. I got the. I said, you get me a 2XL, I'll wear it. and then we get it, and she's like the next day, aren't you going to wear it to work? I said, not yet. I said, I'll wear it to work eventually. But so the wife and I, with no kids and a dog, now have matching live PD hoodies. We're officially 75 years old.
That's awesome.
So I'm going home to the old folks home after tonight. All right. I'm not going to completely buzzkill what you said because of this. Chip and I were talking off the air in the 3 o'clock, and Chip brought up a really good point, and I completely agree and could see this happening, not easily, but I could certainly see it. The Vikings are going to make the playoffs. I believe that. The rest of the conference below them is just a mess. Mm-hmm. And I think they're going to win on Sunday. I think they're going to win enough in the final 3 games that they're going to make it, and it's not even going to be a huge sweat to make it. And as Chip said, and I really can see this happening, is if they match up against Chicago, it would not take an act of God to go to Chicago, Soldier Field, and win. They don't win there much, and Chicago's defense is really good, but couldn't you see a really well-orchestrated offensive game plan where where they basically put kid gloves and handle Kirk, and so Kirk plays well, but he doesn't have to be phenomenal. But more importantly, Trubisky completely melts down. So Trubisky throws like 3 picks, 1 for a pick 6, and you win 21-7 or something.
Yeah.
The fly in the ointment to the Super Bowl is I don't think you can go to New Orleans and win. Like, if you have to play the Saints there, I think you're dead. I don't think Kirk... I think ultimately what you're going to find is, unfortunately, that this might be true for 3 years. I think when the game gets absolutely huge, I don't know that Kirk can win. I just don't. Now, I've seen enough now to question that. But if you want to go down a path where the Vikings make the playoffs, which I think that they will, and win a game or possibly a second game if they played the right team, I could see it.
So maybe what you would need then is, because going into that stadium against that team is going to be a tall task. I think they could go and beat the Rams in L.A. Mm-hmm. I think they could go. They should have beat the Seahawks if they wouldn't have had their heads in their...
That defense right now is playing great.
But I could see a Russell Wilson honed Seahawks squad going in and pulling an upset against Drew Brees and the Saints. Now all of a sudden you get a lesser team if you were to advance that far. So you're kind of hoping that the Saints get knocked off, like the Vikings knocked them off last year. I don't see a Mitchell Trubisky team going super deep in the playoffs. So that's what I'm saying.
I just think I've said it for weeks, and I'm going to keep saying it. I think for this team to go to the Super Bowl, Kirk Cousins is going to have to turn into Joe Flacco in 2012. And it was the same sort of situation with him back then, right? Where, Joe Flacco, can he get it done? Is he really that good? Is Joe Flacco elite? Is he really that good?
Oh God, let's go back to that argument.
Right.
The answer is and always has been no, by the way.
But he never really has been, ever. Yep. But in that playoff run, he was fantastic.
And the absolute key to that, though, was that he made no mistakes.
Right. So he didn't throw a single pick that whole playoff run.
And I could see getting Kirk Cousins through a game in Chicago, playing a really smart, solid game, no picks, no fumbles. I don't see him being able to continue that throughout the entire playoffs.
And I think if they're going to go on a run to the Super Bowl, that's what it's going to take.
You're probably right.
Yeah, Joe Flacco in the regular season 2012 was very pedestrian.
Yep.
59% completions, 22 touchdowns, 10 picks. He was very conservative. Under 4,000 yards. They didn't put a lot on his plate. They didn't. Now, the next year, he threw like 100 more passes because they paid him $20 million.
But the playoffs were a
disaster.
I don't think he threw a pick in those playoffs.
In the playoffs, they beat rookie Andrew Luck at home because they won. The difference is that Ravens team won their division. They won the AFC North. So they beat Andrew Luck at home. Then they went, remember in the divisional round, they went and played that overtime game at Denver where they won. They tied it up on the Hail Mary.
Right. He threw a pass. Didn't he just throw a floating pass up in the air and Torrey Smith came down with it or something?
And ran it all the way
and
for
the defensive back completely screwed it up.
Yep. Manning threw an interception in overtime, and then the Ravens ended up winning that game in Denver. And then they went and kicked the crap out of the Patriots in the title game.
Yep. So Joe Flacco went from just a pedestrian, probably below average quarterback in 2012 regular season. But he had this big arm, and he sort of had it in him to burst out for a few games. I would argue, in the playoffs, you're wondering, his numbers were 4 games, 4-0, and he threw 11 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and threw for 1,100 yards in those four. He averaged just under 300 yards a game against some of the best teams in the NFL.
That to me is going to be the question. Can if they're going to go to the Super Bowl, can Kirk Cousins just get hot for 4 games?
But here's the thing: that defense, that wasn't the 2000 Ravens defense. That was a very good Ravens defense with a couple Hall of Fame pieces. This Vikings defense, I would stack up against that 2012 Ravens defense, and I would put Kirk Cousins above 2012 Joe Flacco. Now, the offensive lines, I don't know. I have to go back and see. I'm sure the Ravens probably had a better offensive line.
That offensive line had Matt Burke and Bryant McKinney.
But the difference with that Joe Flacco, though, is he played really well, but he made no mistakes. If you can assure me Cousins makes no mistakes, then I feel good.
Well, I can't assure you that, but I'm saying that if they win the Super Bowl, it'll be, to your point, he's not going to throw 3 interceptions.
But when
in
the
game.
thermostat gets turned up to incredibly high, I see him being like, "Ooh, this is going to be tough."
Yeah. So I'm just saying
I can see a playoff win
if they hadn't flipped. I honestly think that the flipping of the offensive coordinator, maybe the play calling is relatively similar. I just feel like making that change. Football is the type of sport where you make a change and you can get a short-term burst.
Yeah.
You're going to bring in Coach Ogeron. Coach O is going to fire
Sunday.
up the troops. And
I'm convinced they're going to win on Sunday. And the thing about this is the change that's going to come, though, is, and I guarantee this, Dalvin Cook is going to be extremely involved, and he should have been the whole time. The Dalvin Cook thing to me, and I know he got hurt, but the Dalvin Cook thing as of late has been a mystery. That Patriots thing made no sense. When he's taken up chunks of yards, and he's good. I don't care what anybody says. Patrick says he's not that good. That's not true. Dalvin Cook's really good. And if you use Dalvin Cook correctly, especially in 2018, I think he's the perfect player for today's game. It made no sense to be like, well, we'll come back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, John DeFilippo and now Kevin Stefanski, this wasn't a job. It wasn't a perfect. You're not walking into a Hall of Fame quarterback and, the early 90s Redskins offensive line, but this was a job that really set you up well as a coordinator. You've got a lot of different pieces for which you can use. Let's talk more about this because I know Tom Pelissero, I know he goes back with Kevin Stefanski too, back to the Brad Childress era of Vikings football. So we'll continue the football hour with Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, next.
But before we do,
Mackey and Judd are back.
I have indeed been uploaded, sir. We're online and ready.
On 1500 ESPN.
All right, let's check traffic here in the TCL broadcast studios. 35W northbound, Arden Hills. We got a crash between 694 and County Road 96, causing about a 7-minute delay. Otherwise, everything else around the metro is running well.
Yeah, I'm already getting laughed at on Twitter. Guy Schuster chiming in on Twitter.
Oh, you're making fun of Guy.
Laugh my ass off. Crying, laughing emoji. I just heard Phil say that the Vikings still have now he's putting words in my mouth. He said, I just heard Phil say that the Vikings still have a good chance to win the Super Bowl. No, I said the Vikings can still win the Super Bowl. But they need the 2012 Ravens or 2007,
Guy
2011
Schuster,
Giants
my burner
formula.
account.
Yeah, it has to be.
It's my burner account. Most people don't know that, but I go on and then Guy Schuster.
Tom Pelissero, his burner account is just at Tom Pelissero on Twitter. It's very easy to find. And he works for the NFL Network. Do you think I'm a crazed maniac when I say that the Vikings, if they put what they've done at their peak defensively and what they've done at their peak offensively this year, if they put those things together for a month, that we shouldn't rule them out? Or am I a maniac?
I don't think you're a maniac. I think it's just that they've not sustained that type of all-around play for any extended stretch. Now, I do think that what's happened over the past 6 weeks or so has made people forget what the Vikings did maybe the first 7 weeks of the season, particularly on offense, when, let's not forget, the defense was not exactly playing at full tilt in the early going. You go back to week 2 at Green Bay, for instance, that was not a very good defensive performance. They had some letdowns in the early going. The offense, though, was rolling. They were throwing it around. That allowed them to kind of weather that storm a little bit. The offense obviously has become the issue. The defense still showed up against the Seahawks team that's been very good at controlling the football this season last week. So sure, if they were to get back to that peak on both sides of the ball, then they have the opportunity. We just really have not seen that type of dominating all-around effort in a lot of instances this season.
So, Tom, how much do you think that the transition from Flip to Stefanski is going to help this offense in the last 3 games of the regular season?
It's so hard to predict, Judd, in part because Kevin Stefanski really has no track record as a play caller. So you don't know. Now, first of all, let's not forget it's week 15, okay, and they've put in all the time. He's not changing the language. He's not changing the overall scheme. Really, he's going to potentially attack a little bit differently than what John DeFilippo was. There are some other factors, among them the return of David Morgan, who is by far their best blocking tight end. You would think that if Mike Zimmer really wants to run the football, that bodes well for their chances to run the football because they've lacked that guy and missed him in the lineup in recent weeks. But, above all else, I think sometimes you get a fresh set of eyes on things, just a little bit different type of an approach through the course of the week. I think anytime that there's a firing, that can light a fire under some people too. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, at least in this week, now they go up against the Dolphins defense that has a lot of takeaways, but also has hemorrhaged yards the entire season. You would think on your home field, if you're going to have a favorable type of opportunity to move the football, this is probably it.
Tom, what does it say? Kevin Stefanski has made it through Brad Childress into Leslie Frazier into Mike Zimmer, and then Mike Zimmer at the end of all this, last year wound up blocking him from interviewing for jobs. And I think in a league where it's so easy to come in, whether you're a head coach or a coordinator, and you've got these position coaches on your staff, it's really easy to just wipe the slate clean and bring in your own people. And so I think, I don't know him well, but the fact that he's shown enough behind the scenes for 3 head coaches and a bunch of offensive coordinators to want to still work with him, I would think that says a lot about his ability to move up a step, and I think it says he has a bright future. I think Tom just hung up on him.
He thinks you're crazy. I knew he thought you were a maniac, and he just didn't want to say it.
That was a really long.
You were answering your question. You were asking the question. You slammed the phone down.
I know. I got pretty long-winded there. He got bored with it.
Isn't that what it was?
Yeah. This was Kevin Stefanski, by the way, earlier today. This is the first time he's ever been at a podium, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
The play calling thing, I'm going to, again, rely on, we have a great staff and we have good players, and the still line from Pat Shurmur, it's about the players and not the plays. So it's something that we're going to work on Sunday and let it go. I think Coach Zim's been pretty clear since he's been here what he wants in his offense, and it's the Minnesota Vikings offense. And obviously, it's a physical group, and it really just matches the players that Coach Zim and Rick have acquired here. It's a physical group, it's a smart group that hopefully we're versatile enough to make it hard on the defense.
Yeah, I know my question was long-winded. Did you just hang up on me halfway through it, Tom?
You mentioned Brad Childress, and all of a sudden all the lines go dead. I don't know if that's necessarily a coincidence. Yeah, I know you're talking about Stefanski and how he's survived through all these different offensive staffs. I mean, number one, Kevin Stefanski's a really bright guy. I mean, when you talk to him, you feel like you're learning things. He's very sharp. Everything I've ever heard about him is he's pretty easy to work with. I mean, Mike Zimmer referred to him as a very brilliant guy on the conference call the other day. Number two, I think that, his versatility has been a big deal. I mean, this is a guy who played defense at Penn, but in the NFL has been Brad Childress' assistant, his assistant. He's been coaching the tight ends, he's coached the running backs, he's coached the quarterbacks, and he's been able to have some carryover between all these different schemes, and know the players and know the personnel. He's been a resource on that front as well. When it comes to Mike Zimmer blocking Stefanski, you got to remember the timing, among other things, because they couldn't get John DeFilippo until after the Super Bowl. So when Pat Shurmur is putting in the slip to interview Kevin Stefanski, that's several weeks before that. And Mike Zimmer interviewed Stefanski for the OC job. He may have been, plan B as in that position. He may have been somebody who was going to be considered if they did not end up getting DeFilippo. And so to let him walk out the door when he's the guy who, through the offseason, from my understanding, played a pretty big role in terms of being able to get Flip and Todd Downing and other assistants up to speed on the language of their offense, how the concepts worked in the offense, all that different stuff. He showed his value. Now, is this an ideal situation for him to step in and try to call plays for the first time over the last 3 weeks? No, of course not, especially not on a short week. But, this is also a trial by fire, and if he does well, that'll only help him moving forward.
Tom, if there's a team below the Vikings in the conference right now that should scare them? Because I contend it's pretty much a mess below them, and they're not in great shape right now. But if there's one team that you think people should keep an eye on that might be able to displace them, which of the teams? I think there's 3 alternatives. Would it be?
Well, I think that the thing is, the teams that would be the biggest threats have tough schedules. I mean, the Eagles, now they're going to be playing without Carson Wentz, it sounds like, this week, potentially for the rest of the season. But, they've got the Rams and they've got the Texans. You have the Panthers, who have to play the Saints twice in that span, and the Saints are going for the number 1 seed, so they may well have something to play for even into Week 17. The Redskins are there. They got a little bit of a lift from Josh Johnson, but he hasn't started a game in 7 years, so we'll see whether or not there's any sustainability there. I mean, the fact that next week, if they go to Detroit and the Lions, if they win this week, the Lions are not entirely out of it. I know that they've got 8 losses, but that is a much improved football team. I know people probably haven't watched the Lions in a while, but their defensive front, their run defense is really taking on the identity that Matt Patricia wanted to. They're short on weapons on offense. There's no question, having traded Golden Tate, and their young rookie running back is injured right now. But that's a tough type of football team. And again, if the Lions are still alive, that game, sort of in a backwards way, because you remember the Bears may not have anything to play for at Week 17. That would be, to me, the scariest one they've got left on the schedule.
Yeah. Tom Pelissero, NFL Network. Now, you covered Blair Walsh's rookie year for sure when you were here, and maybe his second year, but you covered Blair Walsh.
Quite a bit. I was at the playoff game in TCF Bank Stadium as well.
So today, Mike Prefer was asked about the Vikings' kicking woes over the past few seasons, and specifically about Daniel Carlson going over to Oakland and them fixing a couple things, and he's been wonderful for them, and Dan Bailey's had a career bad season. And we're going to play you where his answer led to, which is him explaining the Blair Walsh fallout at the end and why that went awry, and we want your thoughts.
What happened with Blair, in my opinion, is that he lost a lot of weight. He was trying to be more fit, and when he lost the weight, he lost his strength. He changed his technique, and then he wasn't as successful. That's something I tried to stop, and didn't get it stopped.
It's kind of interesting. That
what do you think of that?
Blair Walsh
thought he was fat.
I don't ever recall Blair being a heavy guy. He was always a pretty slim guy. I mean, Preef would know a lot better than I would exactly what the guy weighed. There were a lot of different things that happened with Blair Walsh. I remember his last year at Georgia, he hit like 50-odd% of his field goal attempts. Prefer's actually the one who, through the pre-draft process, tweaked some things with him, got him kicking a lot better. He was like 10 of 10 from 50-plus yards in that rookie season. There was, with Blair Walsh, and I don't want to reduce this to, simplistic terms, because I haven't really dived deep with Blair about this either, but it certainly seemed like what happened in that playoff game just ruined his confidence. It's not necessarily a case of the yips, but there was something in there that just kind of was not quite right, and everything went wrong from that point. With Daniel Carlson, now that's another guy who they'd certainly adjusted some things in terms of where he was in college, but the biggest challenge with Daniel Carlson, I remember talking with special teams coaches about this during the pre-draft process, was he's so tall and his feet are so big that it's like being a really tall guy golfing. Like, there's so much more that can go wrong if you're a big guy with your swing, just because you're longer levered, versus a shorter guy. It's not surprising to me to see what some of the Raiders coaches had to say about they had to tighten some things up in terms of his mechanics, and he got a lot better. But Carlson had a really bad day in Green Bay. He was working with a holder who had just gotten there. That may have been a factor as well. I understand where the Vikings felt like they just could not move forward, from that point. But, good for Carlson that he's gone to Oakland and been able to figure some things out.
Yeah. Hey, where are you at the rest of the week here, Tom, in the weekend?
I will be back out there with the Vikings tomorrow, and I've got the game against the Dolphins on Sunday. Kind of one of the sneaky big games, not just for the NFC, but the AFC playoff picture, because Miami continues to win close games. Adam Gase's record in close games is unbelievable. They keep finding ways to pull it out. So a lot on the line for both those teams on Sunday.
Football.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, boys.
See ya.
He's Tom Pelissero from NFL Network and one of the founding fathers of 1500ESPN.com.
I didn't know that about Carlson's feet. Must have been an issue. big feet.
Football. Don't go anywhere. More Mackey and Judd coming up next.
Just hold your ass right there.
On 1500 ESPN.
Are you ready?
Live from the TCL broadcast studios.
We are ready.
Now back to Mackey and Judd. On 1500 ESPN.
Football.
Mackey and Judd. How many polls do we have running right now?
We have two of them. One we just posted last segment, and then another one we posted at the beginning of the show. The first one with DeFilippo out and Stefanski in as offensive coordinator. Are you once again confident in the Vikings offense performing well? 41% say yes. 26% just simply say no. 17% say no because Cousins is still the quarterback. And 16% Brett Favre.
There you go. How many? 16% Brett Favre?
Yep.
That's right. Those are
out
my
of 466 votes. And then the one we posted just a couple minutes ago.
Look at those results.
Is Phil Mackey a bit delusional or a maniac in his words in thinking the Vikings can still win the Super Bowl this year? 48% say yes, 52% say no.
The people have spoken.
I've spoken.
The people have spoken.
But
Phil,
I said
there's still
delusional.
23 hours and 50 minutes left on it, so.
I don't
Yeah,
know,
we
that
can't
feels
delete
like
the poll.
How many precincts
We're not going to delete them. Exactly right.
Let's play. Let me find this here. I saw this. I haven't actually heard or seen this, but it was all over the internet. This Stephen A. Smith thing.
Yes.
And I just saw him. He was retweeting. This is like a 30-second clip here. He just retweeted one of the people that sent the video out. So he was on First Take this morning with Max Kellerman.
Mm-hmm.
And
Teddy Bruschi as well.
And Bruschi? Okay. Yeah. And they were asking him tonight, it's the Chargers and the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football.
Really good game.
Huge divisional game, couple playoff teams. And the question was, like, who are the players to watch tonight? Specifically, in this case, for the Los Angeles Chargers.
And I'm going to have some faith in Spencer Ware and thinking that, he can do some things. I'm keeping my eyes on this matchup right here.
Spencer Ware's out.
I'm sorry?
Spencer Ware is out.
Oh, yes, I forgot. I'm sorry,
out
Max.
with a
I'm
foot.
sorry.
Yeah,
absolutely. He is out. But I'm thinking Tyreek Hill. I'm thinking Patrick Mahomes. I'm also looking at the San Diego Chargers on offense, and I'm thinking about Hunter Henry and the way that he's played this year and as effective as he's been. He's going up against Derek Johnson, and I got to keep my eyes on that because I'm looking at it from the standpoint. Listen, here's where I'm at with all of this.
Okay. So let's go through this. So Spencer Ware
is out tonight. So he was told. Right? He was told that by Max.
Okay. Hunter Henry was the second name he brought up. What's the deal with Hunter Henry? He hasn't
tore
played
his ACL in like May.
Yep, tore his ACL in May.
So he hasn't played a game this season.
Out all season.
All season he hasn't played.
Right,
not a single down.
And Derek Henry or
Derek Johnson, who was released by the Chiefs after
in
last
March.
season.
Yeah, not currently in the National Football League.
Hasn't played a game this year
for anybody.
Not on a roster.
Play that again.
Three guys who won't be.
Can you play that?
How is that possible?
Three guys who won't be in Kansas City tonight. He's looking forward to watching them.
Can you play that again though? It's so bad.
But I'm going to have some faith in Spencer Ware and thinking that he can do some things. I'm keeping my eyes on this matchup right here.
Spencer Ware's out.
I'm sorry.
Spencer Ware is out.
Oh, yes, I forgot. I'm sorry, Max.
With a foot.
Sorry.
Yeah,
absolutely. He is out. But I'm thinking Tyreek Hill. I'm thinking Patrick Mahomes. I'm also looking at the San Diego Chargers on offense, and I'm thinking about Hunter Henry and the way that he's played this year and as effective as he's been. He's going up against Derek Johnson, and I got to keep my eyes on that because I'm looking at it from the standpoint. Listen, here's where I'm at with all of this.
I think you're off.
That's amazing.
I think your off-air theory is right.
That someone fed him.
Yeah.
So in defense of Stephen A., the dude's got a radio show. He's got the TV show. He's got all kinds. He's reporting on stuff. And they just did a throwaway segment. Hey, tonight on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
And I think it had to have been some production assistant or some intern purposely floated him bad information.
I think you're right
because there's no way you can get all of that wrong.
Well,
not that badly.
Not that blatantly bad.
And why would you be going sort of like to that next level in depth? Like you would ordinarily say, I'm going to be watching Mahomes and I'm going to be watching Phillip Rivers, right?
The best part is when he mentions Hunter Henry And then Teddy Bruschi's just like, what?
The video is amazing. Teddy Bruschi is listening. He thinks he's like, wait, hold on. What? And then the camera quickly goes off Max and Teddy, who are clearly questioning what he's saying, and it's just a one shot, and Stephen A. just going off about this. It's amazing.
There's no way, because he probably has people. Hey, I've got my takes on this, and this.
Right.
For these other throwaway segments, just give me some names or something.
Right,
Help me
exactly.
prep the segment.
Yes.
Someone had to have hung him out to dry, right?
But even then, though, this matchup, the Chargers and the Chiefs, the Chargers are 10-3.
There's players to pick.
Yes,
Right, yeah.
these are two of the best teams in the NFL.
The best part about the Bruschi reaction, though, is watching the gears in his brain actually grinding. Because, it's football, so you got these huge rosters, and you can see him sort of thinking to himself, well, I don't think, what?
Well, then, the Los Angeles Chargers tweeted out their updated injury report for the game.
Great.
Update: LaDainian Tomlinson, Dan Fouts, and Lance Allworth are all out for tonight.
Mackey and Judd are back.
Start churning butter and put on your church shoes, little sister, because we're about to blast off.
On 1500 ESPN.
All right. We got crashes all over the metro, and we got to wrap with Reusse here, so I'm not going to be able to get to them all, but I'll tell you about a couple. Highway 100 northbound, we got a crash in St. Louis Park. Judd Zolgad's stomping grounds. That's some sort of Judd Zolgad effect going on, because there's always seems to be a crash in this area near Excelsior and West 36th Street, causing about a 5-minute delay. Also, 35 East southbound in Little Canada between 694 and Little Canada Road. Prepare for an extra few minutes if you're headed southbound on E.
Thank you, Manny. Mackey and Judd here. We wrap with Reusse every single day on the show. And Pat, it's not enough for our sports teams to take their lumps on the playing surfaces and to be without major championships outside of the Lynx for 25 years. Our teams are also bad when it comes to health inspections in the arenas and the stadiums.
I see that. Who did these inspections?
It's not just any publication. It's ESPN's Outside the Lines. It's Bob Lee and Company reviewed food safety inspection reports for all 111 North American pro sports teams. And
where are we, last?
What's the Judd or Manny?
Jonathan has them. Jonathan.
U.S. Bank Stadium runs last in the state. They are 90th out of 111 North American venues.
What does that even mean? Does it mean the food's tainted?
It means that they inspected 195 total outlets in the stadium, and 116 of them came up with high-level violations, amounting 59% of them did.
Oh, God.
All right. When I, a week ago, wrote about how I don't like U.S. Bank Stadium, and all those people sent me emails telling me to die and other things, well, maybe I will die trying to eat their food. So, I think you all owe me an apology. You all owe me an apology.
It's not bad enough, Reusse, that I spent $42 to buy us 2 hot dogs and fries, but they're trying to kill us for $42.
You know what? Ever since I ate that dog, I haven't felt that well either. So, $42, and Judd tried to poison me. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I'll have the chicken sandwich with a side of salmonella, please. That'd be great.
Wow, that's fantastic. That is great. Manny, by the way, you're worried about that traffic up there on 36, trying to avoid an accident every day? Because we're trying to get 5 pounds of excrement in a 3-pound bag. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's a mess over there.
So anyway, yeah. It's Highway 100 used to be a nice little ride. No more. I'm at the volleyball, folks. Lots of red walking through the Skyway a couple hours ago. The Nebraska fans are out in force.
What happened to our Gophers, by the way?
They won the first set handily. Then they got into this brawl, this marathon, the second set, and as I said, they thought they won it. They were dancing around, and then all of a sudden there was a review. And they decided to award the points to the other side, and maybe validly. It was about a 50-50 call. And then they got beat that set, and they were emotionally distraught after that. They couldn't get her going again. Although they gave away the third set, but the fourth set they were leading and kind of went in the tank at the end. I don't know. They lost their spunk, I guess. It was these teams are fairly close, and if you give away a set, you're asking for trouble. And That's what they did in the third set.
Judd's got Hugh McCutcheon on the hot seat after failed.
No, Hugh's
He's
fine.
never won the big one. He's never won the big one.
Hugh's fine.
Won the big one.
Big crowds there, Patrick? Big crowds expected?
They've gotten to be like the hockey Final Four and stuff like that. They sell them out in advance. Now, I'm sure there's tickets floating around today because there's probably 8,000 Minnesotans that had tickets and aren't quite as full of vigor to show up as they were. And I'm sure that people were able to get their hands on tickets. I don't know. Brigham Young and Stanford, the first game won't be nearly as full as the Illinois and Nebraska in the second game, I would guess. Although, we got a lot of Mormons in town, don't we? Won't they show up and root for BYU?
We do have a lot of Mormons. I think you're right.
Come on, guys. Bring your wives and let's go.
I need 5 tickets. I need 8.
I couldn't avoid the cheap shot. I hope there's nobody from BYU around here. I hate to be an improper guest. By the way, the last time Stanford was here for a national championship in women's sports was it was the first Connecticut national championship. So what year was that? Right here, Target Center,
95 with Rebecca Lobo, right? For UConn, 95.
Yeah, and they had a great player. What was that kid that the rival for the national player of the game? Stanford. Anyway, Stanford stunk it out, right? UConn killed them. Stanford, I think, was favored. Total, wasn't it? POLTL, something like that. Okay. And they stunk it out. And I did what I did when I went to the Final Four, and somebody stuck it out. I savaged them, right? in a column about. I said, now we know why their mascot is a tree, because that's the way they move on the basketball floor. Something like that. Oh man! The next day, the host committee. Mm-hmm. I was walking down the hall, and all these women were screaming at me. The local Minnesota. These are our guests. You can't be writing that. I said, hey, they stunk. It's not my fault. Don't blame me.
Right, yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, do you...
Yes.
What are your... Lindsay Whalen, do you think she has a chance? It's not like there's that many powerhouse women's basketball teams around. I mean, there's more than there were 20 years ago when the UConn team that you're talking about, but... Do you think she has a legitimate chance to put this program on a national map to where they might have a chance to go to a Final Four, every once in a while again?
Maybe, but they're a long way from that. Don't get deceived by the unbeaten thing. They're just rated high because people know Lindsay's coaching them. I mean, Boston College is, UConn will beat them by 30 points, and Syracuse, I guess, was the other win. But this is Marlene Stallings left her a horrible schedule. I mean, just absolute walkover games, and we don't really know yet. I saw some of the first game, and I thought they might be a little too small. Now I think they're probably better than I thought they were, but she doesn't have any depth at all. They play like 6-7 players, but we'll see. I would guess that they're not going to be rated when the year's over, but they might make the tournament. So,
hey, Patrick.
Yeah, we'll see.
Patrick.
If they get the kids from Hopkins, who UConn's trying to get, then we can get excited. Paige Bucher.
Did you hear why we found out from Mike Prefer today why Blair Walsh sucked at the end?
No.
Listen to this.
Listen. There's a quick soundbite here. All right.
What happened with Blair, in my opinion, is that he lost a lot of weight. He was trying to be more fit, and when he lost the weight, he lost his strength. He changed his technique, and then he wasn't as successful. That's something I tried to stop, and I didn't get it stopped.
Blair wanted to be a model. That's what it turned out. He wanted to weigh $120, and because he lost too much weight, it was never Prefer's fault. It was Blair's fault.
Why did Prefer jump in front of the Zimmer runaway bus and insist they keep Carlson for a couple of more weeks? Isn't that a little early to panic? 2 games into the season, and
you're talking to King Panic here. So.
I know, but here's the deal. They were lucky to get a tie there. What the hell are they complaining about? Green Bay handed them a tie. Give the kid another week or 2. I mean, Zimmer, I think he's a lunatic. I think he's got a screw loose. You know, he's the most impatient guy that ever lived. He should meet Such. He and Such could have a race to see who could get to the car first and make the light. You know? So he and Such should be a competition. I think he's a lunatic. I've lost all faith in him. Although now if Stefanski gets 25 points against Miami, he'll be a genius. So
well, yeah, and he's definitely wound up, but he's the defense is on track. He's been such a great defensive coach. It almost makes up for how bad he's been just sort of managing some of these things.
I think there's some people out there that feel like he wants to beat everybody 17-6, and then he can be the hero instead of let him throw the ball around and make it harder on his defense. If your defense is that great, don't worry about running the ball, right? Throw it every play. The modern NFL. I don't know. I think he's goofy.
Yeah.
That's my new theory, anyway.
Makes him fun to cover, though.
Oh yeah. You know, makes it fun to host Wine Line. I'll tell you that.
Oh, you got that right.
Let's just say that Dylan in Portland went a little bit viral. I think that's up to 200,000 people watching that clip on Facebook.
I thought it was a shtick. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is that nuts. But I thought he was trying to go viral. But that's good. What do we care?
Yeah, he dove into the analytics, and then by the end, I think he had moved into the emotion.
Unintelligible.
Yep. Well, Pat, enjoy the volleyball action tonight, and we'll catch up tomorrow.
All right. See you.
All right. We wrap with Reusse every day. And you can find Reusse and Judd Unchained on the Mackey and Judd podcast feed, wherever you would find our show on demand or in podcast form, 1500ESPN.com, the mobile app, or Apple, wherever you find podcasts. You guys do it every Monday.
Yes, and he was he gave his thoughts on Harold Baines going into the Hall of Fame, which are worth the entire podcast sit down for this week.
You're dragging me to a hockey game tonight. Panthers in town against the Wild.
Pesky Panthers, man.
Yep. I'm only a sweet level guy at the X, though, so that's why I'm going tonight.
I'm going press box first, then sweet.
Okay.
Got to get my stats.
We're back tomorrow.
See ya.